right. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. It's great to see many familiar faces to me and many faces that are unfamiliar to me. I got the idea for something like The Sound of Science a few years ago when Roger Hangarter, he's faculty at the University of Indiana, I listened to him speak, and he played this sound. It sounded kind of like a screechy kind of sound. And he said, "This is the sound of my data. This is my science. And if there is ever any way you can make your data into music, you should do that." And that comment really stuck with me. Years after that, I met Kyle Shaw, who's sitting in the back, a music composition student here at the University of Illinois. And we pulled together a team of scientists and a team of composers to do just that, to make music from our science. My mom's a voice teacher. I was getting really excited about this project, and I came to her and I told her about it. And I was expecting, a real positive reaction. And all she said was, "Why?" And I realized I didn't know why. For me, it just seemed naturally awesome, but why? That was a good question. So this is my attempt to answer that question. As scientists and as musicians, we struggle with a similar problem, and that is to bring our work to a broader audience. As scientists, we fail to take our message outside of a very narrow research field. We fail in that. So, question. Please raise your hand if you came here because you're a musician or you're interested in the music side of things. So you're not necessarily a scientist. Okay. I hope I don't embarrass you. Question for you, very important question. When was the last time that you thought about photosynthesis?
I haven't thought of the sound of photosynthesis.
Occasionally? A frequency. If there was a survey, like often, sometimes, never, what would it be? Sometimes. So maybe once a month, maybe? Sure. Okay, once a month. All right. One time a month. Now, this is amazing to me, because when I get up with my kid at 2 a.m, because he needs help going to the bathroom, he's a toddler, not like a teenager, I'm thinking about photosynthesis. So this is our challenge, is someone like me needs to find a way to talk to someone like you. You're a smart guy. You came here, right? All of you are smart people. We need to find a way to have this conversation. And it's important for you to know, because you need to know what your tax dollars are supporting and why my research is important. So the sound of science is maybe getting at that. Can music be part of that conversation? And more, this is an important conversation to have as we have growing challenges both with how humans are shaping the world and as we try to get plants to do things more and to do things that they've never done before. So with that, I'm going to turn the time to Kyle Shaw, who's the composer of the head composer of the collaboration, to give his thoughts on the music side of things. Thank you all for coming.
Well, you heard it first. I was just promoted to head composer. When Berkeley approached me earlier this year about the prospect of doing a collaboration of this sort, I'm not entirely sure what he had in mind. Now that I've heard him speak, I have a little bit better of an idea. I thought perhaps he thought that this would be kind of a novel thing that would drum up some publicity for scientists to present their research, and I'm not sure that he was aware that there's actually a rich history of scientists turning their data into sound to learn something meaningful from them. I'd like to read a little excerpt from here. This is Alberto da Campo. He's got a short history of sonification. Here we go. Employing auditory perception for scientific research has not always been as unusual as it is in today's visually dominated scientific cultures. In fact, sonification has had a number of precursors. In medicine, listening to the body's internal sounds for diagnostic purposes seems to have been present in Hippocrates' time, long before the invention of the stethoscope in 1819. In engineering, some mechanics excel at listening to machines. For example, expert car mechanics can often tell where problems originate just by listening to a running engine. Galileo may have employed listening for scientific purposes. He seems to have verified the quadratic law of falling bodies by running strings across an inclined plane at distances increasing according to the quadratic law, 1, 4, 9, 16, and so forth, so that the ball running down the plane would ring bells attached to the strings at a regular rhythm. This experiment was reconstructed later, and it was shown that time measurement using 17th century, the water clocks from the 17th century that he otherwise would have had at his disposal were too imprecise. So listening for rhythmic accuracy provided a more plausible procedure. More recently, the official history of sonification research began with the first International Conference on Auditory Display in 1992, which brought many researchers working on related topics into one research community. The book based on the conference proceedings is still the main reference on this topic, and ICAD conferences are central events for sonification researchers. So that's what was going through my mind when Berkeley approached me, and so I looked at this as a fascinating opportunity. I think what we've tried to do is perhaps, if there is a boundary between turning data into sound, and if there's a boundary between that and art or music, then I think we've tried to cross that boundary and come up with something that's aesthetically valuable and interesting. And as composers, our material is sound. We work with sound much in the same way that sculptors work with clay. And so anytime that we get the opportunity to get our hands on new clay, as it were, or come up with new ways of generating sound material to work with, that's always very exciting and that's very interesting. And I'll stop talking so that we can actually get on to why you came. So you should have a printed program, so I'll just kind of let you know how this is going to go. We're going to invite the scientists up to talk for just a couple of minutes before each piece that was written based on their data. And then we're just going to follow the program without any formal transition between each presentation. So without further ado, I will invite Deepak up to tell us a little bit about his research. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I will start with the motivation of my work. We need to increase agricultural production by 100% to meet global demand by the end of this century. And most of our food comes from plants, either directly or indirectly. And to address this issue, we are investigating how plant grows and how we can make them grow faster. Just like us, plants also need food to grow, and one of the essential food for plants to grow is sunlight. In our world, there are people who have access to more food, and there are people who struggle to meet minimum daily requirement. This inequality also exists in the world of plants. Sunlight, which is an essential food for plants, is not equally distributed among all the leaves of the plant. Leaves which are at the top of the plant, they receive more sunlight, and leaves which are at the bottom of a plant, they receive less sunlight. If we can find a way to distribute sunlight more uniformly among all the leaves from top to bottom, then we can make leaves and plants happier, and they will grow faster and they will give us more food. It is estimated that using this method we can increase productivity by about 40%, and this gain is achieved without much investment in additional fertilizers or water. For this presentation, I have calculated quantity of sunlight falling on leaves of a sugarcane plant from 5 a.m. in the morning to 7 p.m. in the evening. And this data was used in the structure of a composition, and now we will hear this composition. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Charles Pinion. I'm a PhD student in Steve Long's lab. And today I'm going to tell you about Dr. Vonne Kromdijk's project. Though unfortunately he wasn't able to make it here today, I'll be introducing his work to you. It's pretty fitting that it should be coming right after Deepak's amazing piece, as these two projects tie in with each other pretty closely. So, as we've seen earlier, with the world population increasing, we need to match that increase with increased food production. Now, a lot of work has been done in increasing yields in the past few decades, but many of these methods have already reached their limit. That means that if we're not able to innovate and find newer pathways for advances in research, then we could be facing major food shortages as soon as the next 30 years. And this impact would mostly be felt in developing countries where, of course, food is already an important limitation. So that's why it's really urgent that we start looking into other options immediately. One pathway that shows a lot of promise and has been essentially untouched in the past is the improvement of photosynthetic efficiency. And this defines how well plants use sunlight to absorb atmospheric CO2 and grow. And earlier what we were talking about was essentially how well plants can absorb sunlight. This next project is going to look more into CO2 availability. So although leaves are surrounded by CO2, there are a number of barriers within the leaves that slow its transfer from the atmosphere to the actual site where the CO2 will be absorbed into molecules that can then be used by the plant. And it's possible to identify a number of ways to ease this transfer. For instance, cellular passageways through various plant leaf membranes. Another option would be increasing the air content of leaves, since CO2 transfers through air more easily than it does through water. Leaf structural improvements are also being looked into, such as changing the size and distribution of compartments within the leaves. In order to obtain these changes, a large part of the work to be done involves finding the genes that control these factors and trying to enhance their effects within the targeted plants. This project brings together an international team of scientists in an unprecedented effort to fight world hunger with photosynthesis. Ultimately, the advances made here will be incorporated into food crops critical for developing countries. I hope you'll see that how important this project is even more clearly with Sam's musical adaptation. Thank you.
I'm a little bit tall. Thank you, Charles. And as Charles just mentioned, get a little bit more height. This research is very important, Vonne's research on photosynthetic efficiency. So this is supposed to be a photosynthesis rap. I'm a pianist, so this is my first time rapping in public, but I figured I could get away with it since science is the cause. But I wanted to briefly mention that, I think the challenge for me was trying to find a way to sonify the data. And what I eventually ended up doing, you'll hear in the backing track for the rap instrumental, that there is a nucleotide sequence. We know that DNA is encoded with, C, A, T, and G. The thymine is represented by rests, and everything else is represented by the actual C's, A's, and G's on a keyboard. So maybe you can hear the nucleotide sequence in the background. That one gene is 4 minutes long at that tempo. So maybe you can hear a little bit of the science in the background. I also wanted to briefly mention that the actual beat for the rap instrumental is derived from pouring rice and beating on plants in a very kind way, just on the pots, making a little groove. So I hope you enjoy. One, two, three, 4. Photoautotrope, photoautotroph. Photoautotroph, using light for food and growth. Chloroplast prevail, the proteins in organelle. Reaction center, factory, producing chlorophyll for you and me. That's right, G, so we can breathe. In just 35 years, I have more time. In just 35 years, the FAO fears that as population booms, we need scientific peers to increase photosynthetic efficiency. That will be the key, as there will be billions more to feed.
Carence de nourriture, famine et malnutrition en masse dans les pays du tiers-monde.
Let's take a quick look at the world today. 805 million beings, chronically undernourished. We critically need scientific research underway. Yield potential has slowed down, not flourished. As numbers drop on production of arable crop and the final biomass of plants reaches its limit, we'll call upon science to get us back on the top, producing food around the globe to fill up every skillet.
FAO is procent meer productie nodig is in 2050
Let's talk for a bit about potential yield, which is derived from total sunlight hitting plants in the field. How well you get your sunlight and how well is photosynthesized determines the total biomass that can be realized. Multiply the fraction of edible parts with biomass and you derive potential yield. Cheers, now raise a glass.
Plants require light to perform photosynthesis and thus to grow.
Revolution, one way to fill up parts has been to engineer plants to maximize edible parts. Science shows this final biomass is close to capped, but other ways exist which have hardly been tapped. Approaches to control photosynthetic efficiency remain an outlet to explore if we wish to succeed. With the challenge of 3 billion more mouths to feed in only 35 years, a giant challenge indeed. That's why we need an international team with bright minds to supersede.
Improving photosynthetic efficiency is our target to improve potential yield.
Photosynthetic efficiency depends on carbon dioxide availability. For CO2 gas to enter a leaf, it must first condense by a pressure increase or a temperature decrease. Experiments, I do believe we can facilitate photosynthesis inside every leaf to help CO2 move freely through membranes and chloroplasts, genes encoding proteins to help the process happen fast. While we wait many years to see if data confirms, let's pass the time by studying and jamming out with terms.
Thanks, that was pretty awesome. My name is Justin McGrath. I'm a scientist at the University of Illinois, and I was working with Mary. And so just to describe where we got this data from, as Sam just pointed out, plants take up carbon dioxide, and so that's good. And I'm sure you're all aware that we are increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And so that is actually something that tends to be good directly for plants because they use that for photosynthesis. Something you may not be as aware of is that we also have increasing concentrations of ozone. And so you're probably aware of ozone in the upper layer of the atmosphere. So that's good. That keeps ultraviolet light from burning us, giving us skin cancer. But there's also ozone on the surface of the Earth. And when it's on the surface of the Earth, that's bad because it's actually toxic. It's toxic to humans and it's toxic to plants. So we have this combined thing where we've got CO2, which is good, and then ozone, which is bad. And so we were wondering how this is going to affect crop yield in the future. So it turns out ozone makes plants grow less. CO2 makes plants grow more. We have a data set of leaf growth over time. And this is from soybean. And just as a little bit of background of how soybeans grow, because this is part of how this piece was composed. They start off as a very small plant and they put out one leaf at a time. So they have one leaf that'll emerge and it starts to grow. And as that leaf is growing, another leaf comes out over the top of it and it's growing at the same time. Eventually this one will stop growing. But then you get more and more that come out one on top of each other. And so it's like this kind of like a chorus line of pieces coming in one after each other. And then as these leaves in the bottom get shaded by leaves up top, they'll basically die and they fall off. And so you lose those voices. And so this piece is, when you listen to it, there's going to be an ozone voice and then a CO2 voice and then like sub-voices where you'll have these leaves coming in and growing. And so that's the gist of the piece.
This is fun. None of us have heard each other's compositions, or maybe we've got little snippets of presentations, but this is a lot of fun. And it's fun to see how the science is working together with the music. And I wanted to kind of extend a little bit this idea of photosynthetic efficiency. Let's talk about what we mean here. This is a leaf. This leaf, on a good day, under ideal conditions, is maybe taking about 2% of the sun's energy and turning it into something that the plant can use. Okay? The plant uses this to make the food that we eat, to make the clothes that we wear, to make the air that we breathe. And we've talked about how with more and more people on this planet, we need to find a way to get more and more out of these plants with less and less farmland and less resources in a more sustainable way. This is a calculator. Now you'll see here there's this little solar panel here. This solar panel and this calculator, it's about 5 times more efficient than this leaf. In the most advanced solar cells that we've made are about 40 times more efficient than a leaf. Now, I'm not saying that we'll be able to get this leaf as efficient as this calculator, but might we be able to do just a little bit better? So leaves currently operate at about half of their theoretical efficiency. What if we could just get 1%? If we get 1%, that would be our 50% increase in yield right there. So that's our mission, and that's what we're trying to do. Now, you're going to watch the sound of photosynthesis. You're going to be watching and listening to tiny hydroelectric dams that are inside of these leaves that move protons instead of water, but they get the protons from water through these turbines. They generate the energy that the plant uses to grow. You'll be looking at images of the equipment used to measure these, as well as some other depictions of how leaves use light energy and convert it into energy that the plants can use to grow. So again, this composition is by Kyle Shaw, and we'll just go from there.
afternoon. My name is Ursula Ruiz. I had the pleasure to work with Mo. He is the composer for the music that you are going to listen. So the title of our composition is called Green and Predictable. Explaining a little about the data that Mo used. That's data that comes from my PhD research, where I study the effect of climate change, specifically CO2 and temperature, on the principal crops of the Midwest, which are soybean and maize. He used the data I had for maize to do this sum. The importance of the research work is based on the fact that climate change is going to bring different conditions in the atmosphere. So if we consider that a yield has to increase to fit the increasing population and demand, and we add that the environmental conditions are changing, plants has to adapt to this condition, plus produce more than they actually do. So, well, it was my pleasure to work with Mo, and I hope you enjoy this melody. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Craig Gendrick. The piece you're about to hear is from some data that I provided to Barry Morris and John Nichols, who did the sonification. The details of how that was done were written up in the program notes. So what I'd like to talk about now is just a little bit about the motivation for me wanting to get involved with this project. Like most people that are drawn to plants, I'm fascinated by the diversity and beauty that exists in the natural world. From the delicate forget-me-nots growing high in the Swiss Alps to the massive sequoias in the Redwood National Park. For whatever reason, that sense of wonder about plants took a deep hold in me at a very early age. And that, combined with the engineer in me, made me want to devote my life to understand how plants live and grow. In particular, I'm interested in revealing the strategies that plants use to survive harsh environmental conditions, all while fixed in place at one spot in the ground. What I've discovered is an intricate cellular dance performed by the building blocks of life that's choreographed in a way to cool plants when they become too hot or to fight off an attack by herbivorous insects. To say that these cellular processes are complex is an understatement. Plant biologists like me are only just beginning to dissect all the interrelated connections needed for plants to survive in these harsh environments. In doing so, I'm generating enormous data sets that indicate precisely how plant cells change in response to environmental stress. But these strings of numbers are an abstract representation that can make it difficult to conceptualize the actual cellular response. Sonifying this data, I think, provides the listener with the ability to glimpse into the complex but otherwise silent world within a plant cell. This unique perspective allows one to imagine firsthand the intricate concert that is life. I think we all agree that when interacting with plants, we use our eyes to notice the beauty, our hands to dig in the soil or to pick a delicate blossom, our noses to enjoy the bouquet, and even our taste buds to help us enjoy a plant's contribution to our meal. But our ears are seldom a sense that we associate with plants. Well, the talented musicians that you've heard and will hear in our piece assembled today have taken it upon themselves to change just that. And after these performances, we'll be able to walk in nature and hear things differently. Thanks for being here, and I hope you enjoy Impressions of Green.
wild, from fluorescent fields seduced by a strain. And closing my eyes, I will fall into sleep and maybe dream impressions of green.
That was awesome. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for the composers for making the music. Scientists, thank you for being scientists. Two things. One, we do have a reception. It's going to be in the greenhouse at the plant conservatory. Here's a map. If you need directions, talk to any of us. Also, I would ask you, if you felt particularly moved or you learned something new, please go and be interviewed by our film crew. We are putting together a kind of a 5 to 10 minute YouTube video that will summarize the proceedings from this. And thank you all for coming, and please feel free to ask us any questions. Thank you.